One of the issues raised by the Christian Association of Nigeria during a recent meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari is the alleged lopsidedness in federal appointments. This is one issue the president has promised to look at. This week's edition of the program looks at the federal character. Hello there. Thank you for joining us on the program this week. I'm Gloria Umezuke. The Federal Character Commission was established by the 1999 Constitution, Section 153, with clear mandates. While the first mandate is about ensuring fair and equitable distribution of posts in public service, and the second mandate is about fair and equitable distribution of socio-economic infrastructure in the country. Well, we had a conversation with the Federal Character Commission following concerns raised in some quarters that the administration is lopsided in her appointments. But first, what are the stories that made headlines within the week in the nation's capital? President Muhammadu Buhari has declared support for the primary school reform being undertaken by Governor Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State, which will see the sack of over 20,000 teachers who failed a competency test. Speaking at a special retreat on education for members of the Federal Executive Council in Abuja, the president decried the poor quality of teachers in the nation's education system.
Having been an orphan, I still feel that whatever I did in life so far was built by boarding school. For 9 years I was in boarding school, 3 in primary, 6 in secondary school. In those days, teachers behaved to students or to children like their own children. If you do well, they will tell you do well. If you don't do well, they never spread the rod. And then when I finished, six years in secondary school then, I didn't work for a day. I refused to work for a day. I left home. I refused to work in the local government, and I joined the army. And the army of that time, we went through what we went through up to the Civil War. And then I listened to one of Nigerians I respect. He said after his training here in Nigeria, in the United States, he went to his alma mater, his primary school, to see what could he contribute. I wouldn't mention his name, but when he went, he couldn't differentiate between the students or the children and the teachers. And what El-Rufai is trying to do now is exactly what that man told me about 10 years ago. It is a very, very serious situation. When teachers cannot pass the exam, they are supposed to teach the children, to pass. It's a very tragic situation we are in, and this gathering together, to me, is one of the most important in this administration.
Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo wants the developing 8 countries to remain a potent force for peace, justice and the observance of fundamental freedom at all times. Speaking at the opening of the 6th D8 Ministerial Meeting on the Industrial Cooperation in Abuja, Professor Osinbajo added that it is time to advance the positions of the developing countries in the world economy and diversify to end poverty.
The D8 countries must remain a potent force for peace, for justice, and the observance of fundamental freedoms at all times. And this is especially so with the social upheavals and conflicts and tensions flaring up here and there. In the main areas that we have marked for cooperation, namely finance, banking, rural development, science and technology, humanitarian development, agriculture, energy, environment, and health, We must begin to make concrete plans for collaboration and partnerships. We must use our strengths and comparative advantages to advance the good of one and all of our nations.
The federal government has concluded plans to rehabilitate roads connecting Apapa Wharf in Lagos. This was the consensus reached at the end of a meeting presided over by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
The conclusions are essentially to accelerate first a palliative repair of the Tinkan-bound section of the road, the Liverpool Road, while the procurement being undertaken with the Dangote Group is finalized. Some relief will be provided pending when we finalize procurement. Also to improve traffic management there in consultation with the NPA, and to ensure that some of the persons who are posing as a military task force there are disbanded because we hear allegations of them collecting money to ferry trucks through to the gate, and that's why the Minister of Defense is here. You also have private businessmen who have also offered to help fund some of the projects that are stuck in procurement, like completing our truck terminal and completing some sections of the road. So we are going to deal with all of that.
With President Muhammadu Buhari away in the southeast, the Vice President chaired the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting this week. The Council approved the sum of 485 million naira to retain some consultants that will review and evaluate the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan in 13 weeks. The Council also gave the go-ahead for the construction of the 116 kilometers Gombe-Biu Road at a cost of 27 billion naira.
The duration of the lab is expected to last for a minimum of 13 weeks. It will cover 3 phases. Pre-lab activities for 4 weeks. Phase 2, conduction of the labs themselves, 6 weeks. Phase 3, post-lab activities, 3 weeks. And you will have for each labs at least 100 people from a cross-section of the public and private sectors. So that is the structure of the lab. So they will do the pilot one. Subsequent labs, we will not lead them.
The construction of the Gombe-Biu Road that connects Gombe State to Borno State and also links them to Adamawa, Yobe, and so on. The contract was for 27.233 billion for 117 kilometers. The entire road now excludes the 9 kilometers that have been constructed by the Gombe state government.
The remaining abducted Chibok schoolgirls and other Boko Haram captives may regain their freedom soon. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the hint when he spoke at the public presentation of a book that chronicles achievements of his administration since May 2015.
Addressing the recurrent issue of herdsmen, farmers, clashes, kidnapping, and armed robberies. Within the confines of our budgetary resources, we are given top priority to security. During the year, it was my great pleasure to secure release of 103 Chibok school girls. We are doing our best quietly and as effectively as possible to get the rest released. We are working day and night in cooperation with our international partners to release the remaining girls and all other hostages, men, women, and children.